Welcome to Multifamily Insights. I'm your host, John Kasman, and I want to thank you for joining us for another great episode. Listen, if this is your first time checking out the show, be sure to hit that subscribe button. But if you're a returning listener, make sure you tell us what you think of the show. Leave us that rating review. We want to hear from you and all the things that are helping you, but also any tips or insights that can help you with your investing goals. Now, we've got a great show today. We're going to be bringing back a guest from episode 75, Mr. John Warren. John Warren is the managing broker at Forte Properties, which is an investor-focused brokerage in the Chicago area. Now, he's been a licensed realtor for 8 years and the team leader of the Forte team for 3 years. Now, his success in this business can be attributed both to his experience working with both buyers and sellers, but also his experience building an investment portfolio of 154 apartments. The real estate landscape is changing, and you need to be prepared to take advantage of the emerging opportunities. That's why you should join me and other top real estate investors for the Midwest Real Estate Networking Summit, May 6th and 7th in Chicago. Now, you want to build the connections and partnerships that will help you scale your portfolio. Guest speakers include Jay Papasan, author of the #1 best-selling book, The One Thing; Ray Higdon, network marketing expert and author of Freakishly Effective Leadership for Network Marketers; and Tarl Yarber, Bigger Pockets contributor and the CEO of Fixated Real Estate. Now, join us for the Midwest Real Estate Networking Summit on May 6th and 7th in Chicago. Tickets are available right now at MidwestRESummit.com. Use promo code PODCAST to save on your ticket today. Again, go to MidwestRESummit.com and use promo code PODCAST to save on your tickets. Let's welcome to the show, John Warren.
Awesome. Thanks, John. It's great to be here.
Absolutely. Listen, it's great to get you back. I mentioned that you were a guest back on episode 75, so we'll make sure we link to that in our show notes. But for those folks who haven't heard that episode or aren't familiar with you, why don't you take 2 minutes to give us a little bit more context on your background?
Yeah, no, it's always fun to talk about where you've come from and where you're hoping to be going. For me, I've been an agent for about 8 years, like you referenced, and the agent thing, I kind of slid into it on accident. I used to be a musician and a music teacher, and then got my license like a lot of investors do. And the next thing you know, I was really enjoying the agent side of things a lot more. And I've always wanted to invest. And so I actually started both at the same time, bought a 4-unit and got my license. That was kind of the start for me. And from there, they both grew really quickly. And now I run the team, obviously, but I also buy value add apartment buildings in the same market. So I help people with basically residential brokerage, 1 to 4 units primarily, a few commercial deals here and there. And then as a buyer, my profile is typically 12 units or more, value add, distressed, looking for problems that I can fix so that I can essentially do the BRRRR method that Bigger Pockets likes to talk about.
Yeah, man. So you mentioned that you kind of became an agent at the same time you became an investor. And a lot of times when I'm meeting newer investors or people trying to start out in the business, they'll ask, hey, I want to be a real estate investor. Do you think I should get my license? What's your answer to that question?
It's funny because that maybe thought of as a competition thing. I've had a lot of my clients get licenses and many of them become colleagues and friends, and that's awesome. And I tell people, if you think you have interest in the transactional side of it, definitely. If you think you're going to learn how to invest from the license, don't, because it doesn't teach you much about investing. It just teaches you about fair housing and agency disclosure laws and all kinds of stuff that you won't be that interested in, lead-based paint disclosures. So, but if the person has a personality where they're interested in representing other people, going and looking at deals, I mean, it makes sense for some people to do it.
No, that's great clarification because so many people, they think that, and your answer is spot on, right? It really comes down to when you're thinking about getting your license, if you want to be a real estate investor, it comes down to understanding whether or not you want to be on the transactional side for other people. If it's just for your own investments, you do not need a license. So understanding that difference is really key if you're going to take the time to learn all that, to study, to go ahead and get your license, hang it with the shop. Just make sure you understand what your end game is before you go through that process. Now, you work with both, investors themselves, primarily in 1 to 4 units, but then as an investor, you're focused more on 12 plus units. Let's start with the 1 to 4 unit landscape. I know that's kind of where you started. That's exactly where I started. What are you seeing in the marketplace of 1 to 4 units, and what should investors know about investing in 1 to 4 units today that may be different than years past?
Yeah, so if you could transport yourself back to 2011, 2013, 14, 15, whatever, buy all of it. But today it's a little harder to buy than it used to be. The 2% rule is long gone. The 1% rule is tough to find. And I think now you have to really be very intentional about what your goals are with this. You're not going to just be able to pick up the first thing that comes to the market. You have to think through, where do I want to be in 5 years? Is this property going to help me reduce my cost of living? Is this especially for house hackers, which we help a lot of. But if you're a pure investor, you just have to stick to your numbers and wait for the right deal. That's kind of what I'm telling people right now. Don't rush. There's no rush. Make sure you're buying something that'll cash flow if this is a pure investment, because there's a lot of, I'd say probably 95 to 98% of stuff on the market doesn't cash flow and never will right now, just based on where we're at.
Have house hackers ruined the market for investors?
That's a good question. I personally think house hacking is just a clever term for something that's always existed. So I'm going to go with no. I think it's just the market has kind of gone back to where it used to be before the 2008 crash, where pricing is high, which is good if you're an owner, and it's bad if you're a buyer, and you just have to be very careful. So no, I wouldn't say that they've ruined it. I think they've normalized it, honestly.
And listen, I started off house hacking, so this is not any shade on house hackers, but
Yeah,
obviously they have a different buying criteria than that pure investor. So
right.
understanding, again, if you're going to live in it, I know for me starting out, we bought a 2 unit, and for that property, the first floor, they pay like $1,400 in rent. I think our mortgage all in with insurance and everything was like $2,300. So we were coming out of pocket $900. Well, prior to that, I was paying $1,500 in rent. So for me, it was a net savings of $600. Plus, I owned the building. Plus, I had equity. So it was a win-win. But an investor would never buy that property because, they weren't making money. Now, granted, I lived in that unit. So if you took me out, they would have cash flowed a few $100s. But the thinking there is that I'm not buying it with the same metrics that investor is going to use because I'm living in the unit. So I don't have to necessarily be profitable. So that does kind of create a little bit of different buying criteria and competition. And we see that really throughout real estate. And people all the time, they talk about the market being tight. And one thing I think everyone has to keep in mind is your return criteria may be very different than what other people are looking for. Whether you're buying a 2-unit property or a 200-unit property, you have to understand that not everyone's looking to structure their deals in the same exact way. As an investor, particularly at the 12 plus units, how are you seeing that come into play in that 12 plus unit space?
Yeah, so I obviously focus here in the Chicago market, specifically western suburbs, west side, northwest side of Chicago. The pricing went up quite a bit, obviously, the last few years, especially while the interest rates were, you get a 3% loan on a multifamily, which is pretty insane. We actually got one of those. Right now, we're still seeing positive cash flow from a lot of the deals that are out there. And obviously, again, everybody has a different buy box or different criteria. So I'm not personally looking for a stabilized, 7 cap or 7.5 cap. But I think those types of properties do exist in Chicago. Again, it's not easy. It never is easy, but you can find cash flow in Chicago. That's the cool thing about it is, even being the third biggest market in the United States, you still can find good cash flow properties, which you cannot in most other large markets.
Yeah, talk to us about your buy box. What does that look like, and how do you define your criteria?
So for me, it's got to have value add at this point. I no longer, quote, need a deal. So I want to make sure that it has value add. In my specific neck of the woods, which would be the near western suburbs, I like to be a buyer that takes the most distressed properties. So the ones with the worst bug infestations, the worst plumbing, all that. But along with that, a low entry price so we can build in the cost of construction, because we've been vertically integrating and building, bringing guys in house for maintenance and unit turns. So that's given us the ability to really keep our costs in line. So we have a good structure on the back end. So my buy box is going to be different than somebody that's getting their first 12 flat that needs maybe like a light play, where they can add a little value here or there, kind of keep the operation running and keep their day job going. I'm looking for the opposite. I'm looking for the worst building on the block, and we can turn it around completely.
Yeah, you're talking about deep value add, right? You're talking about investing tens of thousands of dollars into a unit to bring it up
Yes.
to market rate versus just slapping a fresh coat of paint on the wall. So I think it's really important to understand that distinction when you're investing. When you think of that in the competition for those deep value add properties that you're seeking out versus maybe those light to medium value add properties where it's more about updating the kitchen or the bathroom, what are you seeing in the marketplace there?
It's a competitive advantage for sure, being boots in the ground or local, because I think that these deals are too small to be interesting to, say, like a large institutional investor from out of state, because there's just too many moving parts, too many problems, too many code violations. And they're also typically a little bit too big for some of the newer investors, because there's just too many zeros being thrown around, and that scares, rightfully so, scares people. So there's definitely competition. Don't get me wrong. There's other me's out there that I have to compete against, but it's a smaller pool for the really deep value adds, like you mentioned. I mean, if you're we're typically addressing at least two or three of the major systems of the building completely, whether it's electrical or plumbing or HVAC or roof, and we're going pretty deep into these buildings. And like you referenced, the floors and paint, that's the fun part at the end. For us, that's like, hey, we finally are painting the wall gray. All right, that's exciting.
Yeah, I think the insight there is really, when you are investing, understand your sweet spot, your skill set, and where can you find, less competition. Most investors want the light value add stuff, right? If you can go in and just simply update the kitchens and baths, perfect, right? We all love that. But for you, it's finding the deep value add, finding the things where you have to upgrade the systems, the electrical, the plumbing. Those are the heavy lift jobs that, most newer investors are going to shy away from. And then larger investors, institutional level investors, you're still talking about 12, 20 unit style buildings. So they're too small for them to really care to come in and play. So you're usually competing against similar type of people. And that makes it, more comparable, at least on the number side of things. So just really good insight just to think about if you're having a hard time finding deals, can you tighten up your buy box and maybe pivot to an area where you have some strengths, but maybe there's a little less competition? Did you start there initially, or how did you kind of progress to get to this place where you realize these deep value add deals are really your sweet spot?
Definitely didn't start there. I started where I think most people should start, which is where a coat of paint maybe scares you, changing carpet, like little things. And oh my goodness, we have to put in new smoke detectors, buying this deal as is. And, each deal would have an element of rehab or an element of construction. And I think that's a really cool thing, because it forces you to find new people to get on your team, contractors. And I slowly slid into the deep value adds. I would say that it was probably by our, I did some medium value add, I would call it, on like the third deal. But by the fifth and sixth deal, I was starting to get pretty deep into the buildings. And each one kind of teaches you a new lesson, and you think you know what you're doing. And then the next one teaches you don't actually know what you're doing. But as you go, you get to deal 10, 11, 12. I think I'm at 14 or 15 multifamily transactions now as a principal or as a buyer. And I think that really, now I have a good level of experience in this market where I know what these buildings have under the walls. When I watch those goofy HED TV shows, I'm like, I know what's behind the walls. Nothing good. I know exactly what's there. So that's the cool thing is, and you also build relationships as you grow like that. The reason that somebody shouldn't dive into one of these for their first deal is they don't know the right electrician or plumber or roofer to come in for that particular job. And I've got to the point now where, say, for roofers, I have a good flat roofer and I have a good guy for shingles, and you have different people on your team that you can call on, and they're reliable and they get the work done for a fair price, and helps your business model continue to grow. So I guess to answer your question, I've grown into the deeper value adds from much lighter entry level properties.
I think that's great insight. And I'm so happy that you told people, hey, you should probably not start exactly where you're at today because you want to grow your team. And when we talk about risk and where you should start and where you should play, this is a big part of it. It's one thing to have an electrician. It's another thing to go through a project with that electrician, understand exactly what they're good at, understand where their strengths are, their weaknesses. And hey, this electrician might be great for this type of project, but maybe not very good on this type of project, right? So understanding that. You mentioned the roofer. This roofer is great for flat roofs. This roofer is good for shingles and more of your traditional roofs. So it's really important to understand that, and you won't know it until you actually work with these individuals. So when you are growing and you're mitigating risk and you're trying to figure out how do you manage the types of projects you take on, it should really come down to the team you have. What's your experience with that team? What's your knowledge with that team and their capabilities? And the more comfortable you get with the team you have around you to execute, the more you can take on as far as risk profile. So really great insight on the way you've been able to kind of scale and grow and get more comfortable getting into this space, because of the support you had around those key team members. Um, talk to us about vetting those team members, right? Because we all have to start somewhere, right? You start with a referral or a recommendation and realize this guy's probably not that good or he's overwhelmed. And I think we've
Right.
all gone through that bad contractor or that one person who didn't do what they were supposed to do or didn't show up or the car wouldn't start and every other excuse in the world. So how do you figure out who the right people are to work with?
That's a really great question. And the first sentence there you said had the referral word in it. And that's been a consistent theme for me. When I started in this business, I went to a local landlording meetup, and a couple of the older landlords in the area gave me their guys kind of as a favor. Some of those same guys, like I have a really fantastic HVAC guy that's I still try to keep him on my roster. He's a little older and doesn't he can't do it all, but I mean I got some really good referrals early that are still people that I use regularly. And I think everybody that I work with has been by referral, to be honest with you. I've never really had luck with the, thumbtack or home advisor type stuff. It's and as I've grown too, I've found, smart investor will continue to build their network to help others, but also get the information they need. So I have a small mastermind that I'm in here in Chicago of other vertically ended owner operators, property managers, things like that. And people that are kind of in the same spot. Maybe they manage 100 doors, 200 doors, 50 doors. That group is an awesome referral source. Say, hey, who do you use for X? Who's your attorney that does this or your electrician that does that? So that's how I've continued to build it. And then as you do each project, you realize what each vendor's good at. And you probably know this too, John. I mean, they don't come up and say, hey, I'm an electrician that only changes panels in small projects. I don't do big projects. They'll take it. And then you'll be like, man, why are they so slow? So you kind of learn as you go. This crew is good for this, not good for that.
Yeah, yeah. You've grown your portfolio to 154 units, and that's impressive, particularly when you talk about Chicago and Chicagoland, because the price per door on your units are not, they're not cheap. It's not like you're buying $20,000 a door property. So talk to us about being able to scale and what were some of the keys for you to be able to scale that portfolio?
So, I mean, I always have tried to buy properties that have some value add. Even early on, I was looking for one that needed some work. And I think that that's a good thing for a lot of investors if they have that mentality. That's always helped because over time, obviously, we've seen a lot of appreciation. Maybe we'll continue to see that, maybe we won't, but the market appreciated, and that allowed me to pull capital out of some of my original deals or sell. One of my partnerships decided to kind of part ways, and that allowed me to 1031 exchange a couple of the properties that had a good amount of equity. So I don't think that I have any kind of special secret. There's no secret sauce in this business. You put in the work, you build the value in the property, put together a nice product for your tenants, attract the right tenants, you get a stable rent roll, and that increases the value of your property over time. And then you look to, for me, primarily I look to hold and refinance. But if it makes sense to sell, I will. I'm always a seller too, so I've looked to trade up over time, and that's essentially how I built to where I'm at, and that's the plan going forward as well.
And I know you own some of your properties kind of by yourself and some with partners. Just talk to us about managing those relationships and making those decisions with those partners.
Yeah, partnerships that's a really important thing. It's been key for me to grow. I've had, I believe, 4 different partners now since I started in this business, and I'd say about 2/3 of the buildings are with a JV partner. I've learned to kind of like contractors find a partner that's the right partner for what I need, fills the right role. For me, that typically is somebody that has skill sets that I don't have. Whether typically money, money is important, but also I like to have a partner that's maybe more analytical than me or that's better at the business end of things than me. My strengths tend to be on the ground, kind of, meeting the guys, making sure that things are going right on the ground, unit turns, CapEx projects, leasing. And I have the skill set from the brokerage that I can bring to the table, which is awesome. Where I'm not as strong might be like things like financing. I can obviously can call a lender, but I don't wake up in the morning and look at the treasury or anything like that. That doesn't really interest me in life. So having a partner that does, awesome. Now somebody else is taking care of that side of it. Or one of my first partners was a CPA. That was a really beneficial partner to have, especially in the first formative years, knowing somebody had the books tight. That's really an important part of it. So I think anybody that's whether you're owner operator or syndicator or whatever your model is, it's a team sport for sure if you want to grow quickly in this business. And so picking the right partners is huge.
So when you have a JV partnership like that, how does how is the deal structured and how are you making those key decisions, right? Because like on a syndication deal, that general partnership team, they're leading it, they're making all the decisions, they're driving the boat. With your JV deals, at least in theory, there should be more collaboration involved. So talk to me more about kind of the way you structure the deal, but then also how are you making these key decisions with those partners?
So we would look at each deal differently, but I would say that in general now my company manages all buildings, and so that's huge. So I'm able to take a lot of the routine decisions that none of these partners want to make. Keep this toilet or not. I mean, that's not something that most people get into this business for. So we take a lot of that off the table with the team. We have a really good management team now, and then we can focus in on higher level things like, hey, should we? One of the interesting things we just did is we bought 2 pallets of flooring for a 30 unit portfolio that we purchased, me and a partner, because we can buy it for 48% of the cost from Home Depot. And we know we're going to use it as part of our business plan. So we can do kind of like more interesting things like that. Okay, how can we save on paint? Which contractor should we use for this? Should we keep this system or not? Those are the kind of decisions that we want to make together, not, hey, did we change that light fixture or not? That's not going to move the needle in the grand scheme of things. So yeah, we focus on higher level decision making with the JV partnership, and I am responsible for running the management team, which means that some of those day to day things still come back to me, but less and less as the team has grown and gotten. I have very competent people that work for me, so a lot of those decisions I don't even really need to interface with them anymore.
No, I love it, man. Thank you for sharing that. And I think that the key here is when you talk about partnerships, if you're going to be making those decisions jointly, you want to have someone who has some knowledge, right? It's great to have that money partner, but you also don't want to be making decisions about, growing this real estate portfolio with someone who has no real knowledge of real estate or real estate investing. So there is a little bit of a balance of who you partner with, what skill sets do they bring to the table, and how do you build a winning team? So really great points that you just made there on one, identifying that person, but then two, the kind of decisions you want to make together. Just real quick on the deal structure. Are you doing like 50-50? I know your team is kind of making the day-to-day decisions, but
Yeah,
like
sure.
how are you structuring the equity and just kind of some of those elements?
Yeah, from a high level, what I found to be useful is that I'll bring less of the equity. So, like a simple deal structure that I've done recently is I bring 1/3 of the equity and my partner will bring 2/3 of the equity. We're 50-50 partners. So that upside in the equity is my payment for dealing with all the tenants, termites, and toilets, as they say. And then kind of the sweetener is I'll manage the deal until it's stable for free through my company. That way we can get the thing, because most of these deals don't make money for the first 6 months to a year. You have to really turn the ship around hard on a value add. So we'll get the thing turned around, get it repositioned, get it running right, get it to refinance, and then from there we can cash out, make the other partner whole again in the back end in terms of capital. That's been a structure that's worked really well for me. That way, the partner that's bringing more money knows that they're going to get theirs in the back end, whether it's refinance, cash flow, or sale, and I can bring less money, which allows me to do more deals.
I love it, man. Really good tips, and I appreciate the way you shared that deal structure there. And again, if you're looking to go out there and do JV deals, you can structure a deal however you want, but this is just one example of what John is out there doing. John, for that newer investor looking to get started, buying maybe that 2 to 4 unit light to medium value add, but is frustrated by the lack of deals or not finding opportunities that kind of fit their buy box, what advice would you give them right now?
There's two things. I mean, the first thing is that it took me 4 years to buy my first deal of bumbling around. So when I was first married, my wife and I were super excited about buying a deal. And instead, we paid off all of our student loans back in 2011 when we should have just bought probably anything in real estate. But it's a learning experience, right? So it's not a get rich fast game. You have to put in the time to learn and work. And so I think a lot of people that stumble onto bigger pockets, they hear a podcast about like the Burr strategy and they say, that's it. And they may be right, but they don't have the knowledge, the network, the team to do it. So if it takes you a year, 2 or 3, don't distress. You have the rest of your life to do this. It's not about getting there fast. And that's the first thing that I would tell somebody. The second thing is, and I really believe this, great deals are made, they're not purchased. So I
Say it
think that
again, John.
someone
Say it again.
great deals are made, they're not purchased. You can't find a deal, you make a deal. So you buy an opportunity, but you have to execute on the business plan. I remember hearing a podcast. I think it was like a Joe Fairless podcast. And he kept saying business plan. This was a few years ago. And I kept thinking, what the heck is he talking about? Honestly, it didn't really resonate with me back then. Now I'm like, it's all the business plan. Is it a good deal or not? How's it going according to the plan? Does it fit in? So I think that, yeah, there are too many people that sit on the sidelines waiting for the perfect deal when they should probably just get in and make the deal happen. And they have to get their hands dirty. It's not stock investing. You can't just buy and hope for appreciation and do nothing. You have to get in and get after it.
John, listen, you just gave some very powerful advice, and I hope that this really resonates with people, because that notion of great deals are made, not found, that resonates with me. It's something I've been saying as well, and it's true. Like I can't tell you. Actually, I will tell you. I have never underwritten a deal, have the numbers come out perfectly, put in an LOI at that price point, and gotten the deal. It's never happened, right? So you've got to find something that others don't see, or you've got to be a bit more creative and develop a business plan that you think works really well, but then you've got to be able to go execute. And you also have to understand, if I'm wrong, what's the worst case scenario, or how do I mitigate this risk to the best that we can? And that's going to give you comfort, is knowing that you can mitigate that risk if the market isn't as good as you hope it could be. But you also want to be very conservative with your estimation. So really important to understand these things. You got to be able to create a deal, not just go out there and buy something because the cap rate as is great and it's going to deliver great cash. So if you do nothing to it, you got to have a good business plan. So really great insight for you to have that. For folks who want to learn more about you, your email address is jwarrenbroker. So JWARREN broker @gmail.com. Feel free to reach out to John there. We are now going to transition to our round of insights. All right, John, give me a failure or an apparent failure that set you up for later success.
I did a flip in 2017 with a partner from the local meetup. It was supposed to be a 3 to 6 month process, and I read the book on flipping houses from Bigger Pockets, and I knew exactly what I was going to do. 14 months later, we sold that house. I listed it, GC'd it, did all the work, went to Home Depot back and forth, and I made $1,704 and my partner made double that for putting up all the cash. We went, I think it was something like $60,000 or $80,000 over budget. I mean, it was an absolute train wreck. Fortunately, we didn't lose money. We just lost opportunity cost. That failure introduced me to many of the contractors that I use today, including one of my best maintenance guys who works for me now. And so I think that failure I learned a lot of invaluable lessons about how hard it is to general contract, how hard it is to flip. I just learned so much through that process, but it was a great failure.
Absolutely. Appreciate you sharing that. All right. Give me a digital or mobile resource you recommend for your business.
Digital resource for us, and I don't know if this will be applicable to everybody, but probably the most important change that I made in the last 2 years was to implement AppFolio. So we use AppFolio for management, and we deal with a lot of C-class tenants, which means that many of them are cash payers, and AppFolio has a really powerful cash payment system integrated with it where they can pay in cash. We can even do touchless move-ins with cash payment tenants by sending them a screenshot of the cash pay slip. So we have just loved that part of AppFolio. So if somebody is maybe about to turn the corner from all the freewares out there or just using Zelle and Google Sheets, I think AppFolio was a real game changer for us.
What's the book that you've recommended or gifted the most in the last year?
The book that I give out the most for my realtor friends, so I'll throw out two. Maybe this will be helpful. For my realtor friends, it's How to Make It Big as a Real Estate Agent by Mark Ferguson, a guy that I don't know, but I bought the book for like $12. And that book helped me as an agent, become a very successful real estate agent very quickly. And it was probably the best $12 I've spent. I don't know what it runs for these days. I gift that to every agent on my team, and I also gift it to friends of mine who are getting into the business in other places. It's a great book. On the maybe more business development or real estate side of things, I just started doing Traction. Like a lot of people, I'm maybe a little late to the party, but I think Traction is really great. So I've been giving out traction quite a bit.
Love it. Give me a daily habit that helps you stay focused on your goals.
I do a modified version of the Miracle Morning. So if anybody's a Miracle Morning fan, and every day I look at my goals and I journal and I read and I exercise, and that has been a game changer for me as I've grown my business. That morning time is the best.
All right, give me your number one insight for growing a multifamily portfolio.
My number one insight would be to always look out for other people, which may seem counterintuitive, but I really think it's important to think of how other people in your network are going to become successful by working with you. Early on in my career, I always wanted the cheapest attorney, the cheapest contractor, the cheapest realtor. Now I look to make them profitable, because if I can buy a deal from a broker and he makes good money, guess what? He's going to want to bring me another deal. If I can help my attorney make money by writing up some business agreement documents or something like that, he's going to be there for me when something really bad happens. Same with contractors or anybody in your network. So treat other people well, but also think about how you can help them build their business. That's a routine question I ask when I meet somebody that might be new on my team. I say, how can I help you build your business this year? Like, what can I do for you?
Great question. Great question to ask other people. I appreciate that feedback. All right, last question. We're going to lighten the mood. You are, of course, in Chicago. Give me your favorite place to grab a bite to eat.
So I work a lot in the western suburbs, and I got to throw a shout out to a little hole-in-the-wall Italian place called Freddy's in Cicero. It's on 16th Street. The guy that owns it used to be work in the restaurant when he got off the boat from Italy. He's the second owner. It's a cash only place, and if you forget your cash, they let you pay next time, which is pretty insane. So it's a great spot.
I love it. Now I'm just going to let you know. Do you remember the place you mentioned when you were on episode 75? Now this was about 4 or 5 years ago. So.
Oh no! I wonder if I do. It probably was the breakfast joint in Berwyn. I'm gonna guess.
No, it was Tasty Corner Cafe.
Yeah, Tasty Corner. Yeah, Tasty Corner. A great breakfast joint in Berwyn. Which is
there you go. That is the breakfast joint. Yep. Okay, well there you go.
Yep.
There you go. You're like, no, I still love that place too.
I still love that place too, but I'm doing more deals a little further east, so I found another spot to grab lunch.
I love it. Well, John, listen, great talking to you today. You gave us some really good insights on one. If you're starting out, you're looking to buy 2 to 4 units or 1 to 4 unit properties. One, be patient. Keep working at it. It takes some time. But then 2, also understand what your buy box is. What's your criteria? And if you're going to be focused on, deals where it's light value add, you're going to have some competition. So just think about what your return expectations are. The other thing that I'm taking away from our conversation is if you want to go with deep value add, there's going to be less competition, particularly if you can stay underneath where, maybe some of the bigger players are in the market. You're going to have less, smaller investors competing with you, less bigger investors competing with you. So there could be, kind of an open spot there, or at least less competition. You also talked about referrals whenever you are looking to partner with people or bring on vendors, making sure you get referrals and build on those referrals. It's going to be extremely helpful for you. And then your deal partnerships, working with partners, JV partners, the way you structure it, the way you engage with them, the way you work together. All those things are very helpful for us as investors. Again, if anyone wants to learn or connect with John, learn more about what he's doing and working on, you can reach him at jwarrenbroker@gmail.com. John, it's great talking to you today. Look forward to staying in touch. And
thanks again, John.
You have a good day, man. Take care.
Yeah, you too.